we welcome in our next guest, Mark Schofield, who has written a very cool article for Matt Waldman's website, mattwaldmanrsp.com. He covers usually the draft, Matt Waldman does, but also some really cool NFL analysis. And Mark, you took the time to watch and grind out the Kirk Cousins film, and I thought you came away with some really interesting conclusions, and especially something that touches Rami Makala very deeply, which is a cooking analogy.
Yeah, I love the cooking and food analogies. You brought up America's Test Kitchen. I love that show. Like this article is right up my alley.
So why don't you explain, Mark, why Kirk Cousins is like a chef or a cook?
Well, thanks for having me on, and it's a pleasure to be here. And the article sort of jumped off a discussion that was taking place on Twitter. Dan Orlovsky, Kurt Warner, and others kind of having this debate about Kirk Cousins as a quarterback. And my mind sort of flashed to a piece that was on Matt Waldman's site a couple of years ago about Marcus Mariota, written by Eric Stoner, and he described Mariota as a task-oriented quarterback. And that's sort of when Stoner wrote that about Marcus Mariota during that draft process. I really sort of identified with that piece. I thought it was really well done. I liked the thought process behind it because it sort of taps into what a lot of quarterbacks do when they're in the pocket, going through progression reads and checking off boxes and decisions and things like that. It's what I used to do when I attempted to play the position rather poorly. And so I thought it was a sort of great way to sort of frame the question about not just Kirk Cousins, although the article is dedicated, to him, but quarterbacks in general. Are they bakers in which they sort of go through the steps on a given play, they check off the boxes and the reads, and they just do it by the book? Or are they sort of chefs, in which case, maybe they'll do it by the book on some plays, but on others, they'll go a little bit off script. They'll make some different decisions. They'll look for different reads. They'll maybe go beyond the four corners of the play design in a sense. And I really thought that was a good way to sort of encapsulate where Kirk Cousins is right now and how he can perhaps break into that next tier of quarterbacks as he develops it during his time in Minnesota.
To use your analogy, can an NFL quarterback be a baker and not a chef and be great, or does that sort of limit how good they can be sticking strictly to the recipe like a baker would?
Right. I think you can be a sort of baker-type quarterback and be extremely successful both in terms of just production-wise and in terms of wins and losses. And I think you could make the case that Tom Brady, arguably the greatest quarterback of all time, is more of a baker than a chef. He goes through the read structure that Josh McDaniels will put in front of him. Josh McDaniels does some great things in terms of play design, and Tom Brady will go through his reads. He's so good at the line of scrimmage in that pre-snap phase as well. And he's won a number 6 Super Bowls. He's won MVPs, but he's more of a baker, I'd say, than a chef. And I'm a Patriots guy. I'm a Patriots fan. And so I think the fact that a quarterback sort of fits one box or the other isn't sort of a be-all and end-all of where they are as a quarterback and what they can do for their team. You've seen a lot of quarterbacks more in that Baker mold. And I would say most quarterbacks are sort of that Baker type of quarterback, but you could still be very successful. This isn't a situation where, unless Kirk Cousins does X, Y, or Z, he's going to struggle as a quarterback and Minnesota will not have success on the field as a result. I think it's a situation where these are some things that Kirk Cousins could do to become even better and move up into that next tier of quarterbacks.
Well, that's my question, Mark, is that really possible? Because a lot of the quarterbacks that you see who can go off script, I think, which is kind of how I've always put it, is someone who can, when things break down, that they can find somebody, or maybe they can see something that isn't necessarily there drawn up for them. Or if you're Aaron Rodgers, you just tell receivers to run whatever route you want them to run, right? I mean, maybe that's going too far. That's being like the Gordon Ramsay cook. It's being Aaron Rodgers, but can you really develop that? I mean, Kirk Cousins is not anywhere close to a young quarterback at this point in his career.
You can, but this sort of gets into maybe an underpinning of the discussion, which is you need to have some help from your play designer and your play caller. Because, in the piece, I linked to 3 different clips where I said, look, if I'm sitting back and grading this in a vacuum, like, he makes the right read and decision, he goes by the book here, but there are things that he could have done outside the sort of progression of play that might have led to an even better play for the offense here. But at the same time, he has to know that that's an available option to him. Now, some of the plays, maybe if there was a little bit better play design, the 3rd play that I linked to, for example, he had 2 vertical routes, one along each boundary. Does he even have the option to do that? Does he even have the option to go there? Are we instructing Kirk Cousins as a coaching staff to look beyond the design? And that might be the next question in the analysis is, with the new offensive coordinator, the interim turned offensive coordinator now, is he going to have those opportunities? He's going to get coached up to, maybe try some different things, maybe expand the designs a bit, or are they still going to rely on him to go on him, buy the book, play it and play out? If they give him those opportunities, if they give him those chances, say, look, this is what we usually want you to do, but if you get this look or you get this coverage, or you get this matchup, maybe give it a peek. That might lead to some of these better opportunities for the Vikings to hit on plays down the field in the passing game.
There is a fine line when we talk about this, though, is there not? I was in Milwaukee covering the Packers for a long time before I came here to Score North, and as great as Aaron Rodgers was, when things weren't going so well for the Packers, a lot of the time, and especially for Aaron Rodgers, a lot of the time it's because he would hang on to the ball and wait and wait and wait instead of taking what was drawn up or what was given to him by the defense. That can be a detriment to a quarterback and an offense too, can it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, there's always such a fine line when we're trying to talk about quarterback play, because there's so much that goes into a single play, a given snap, a given route design. And there's so many different ways that a play can unfold. And there are times when, yes, even the chefs of the quarterback world need to be smarter and sort of checking the ball down. You can be overly aggressive. You can wait on route concepts. You can try to create too much, and that will actually harm your offense because, like you said, like you pointed out, you'll be holding onto the ball too long. Route concepts won't come open when they're supposed to. You're not getting the ball out when you're supposed to within the structure of the play. You're not taking what the defense has given you. So, of course, as a quarterback, you have to sort of balance the two. But at the same time, there are times when, I highlighted in the piece with Kirk Cousins, you can probably do with other quarterbacks, when there are options that you have a chance to make a big play downfield and exploit a defensive coverage or a defensive look, you've got to take them. Otherwise, the defense will keep doing what they're doing and you're playing right into their hands.
Talking with Mark Schofield, great quarterback analyst. He wrote an awesome piece on Kirk Cousins on Matt Waldman's website, mattwaldmanrsp.com. So you can go there to check it out. Something I want to ask you about, Mark, is the running element to quarterbacks in 2019. I was going through and just checking off how many guys would you be scared of the running part? Not necessarily that they are Lamar Jackson, but where they'll get you if you let them do it. And it's about half the league now. And Kirk Cousins last year was 24th in rushing yards, and PFF had him dead last in his running part of his game. Is that something that you feel like is becoming where you have to have that extra element to stress a defense, or it's easier on the defense than it ever was with Cousins? Because I feel like last year, it wasn't just, he doesn't really do it well. It was like a legitimate detriment to him that he couldn't take off.
Yeah, and we're seeing obviously more and more quarterbacks come into the league with that sort of spread RPO type offensive background where they're asked to be both passers and runners in their college offenses. And because of the way the league works now, you get those guys into your offense, into your organization. You want to get them on the field. You want to maximize that rookie contract. And so teams are going to rely on guys to create with their legs like they did in college. I mean, Lamar Jackson's first start, for example, he had 23 carries against the Bengals because that's what he did in college, and it translates well at times. And so there is that element where this is what they've been running, and it is a way to sort of keep that defense honest when you have so many play designs, inside zone, wide zone, outside zone, that are based on leaving that backside edge defender unblocked and the quarterback's threat with his legs to keep him honest. You need to have that element. The interesting thing with thinking about Cousins is, and this sort of dates back to his time in Washington, he throws really well on the move, very clean mechanically. Yeah. He really, when he gets outside of the pocket, whether it's to his left or to his right, really clean mechanically. I like the way he throws on the move. I'd like to see them use him on the move a little bit more because he'll do two things. One, he can do it well. Two, usually it'll be off of play action, which is another area where he's pretty good as a quarterback. And that dates back to his time in Washington as well. And three, it helps introduce that mobility element, which will help keep a defense honest on some of their other play designs, including rushing designs.
Well, Mark, I think you're exactly right in terms of him doing play actions and boots and things like that and how well he can throw on the move. It's kind of a funny dichotomy that he is not a good runner, but he can really throw well on the move. I used to feel the same way about Sam Bradford. If you got him rolling, he could make a throw, but don't ask him to run anywhere.
Right.
Just the last thing for you, Mark, they are changing systems here, going to a Kubiak-style offense. And I was watching a little of the 49ers the other night to try and figure out, okay, where could they be creative? How can they help Kirk Cousins? Because to me, the Kyle Shanahan offense is about as creative as you get, especially with the play actions and off the zone runs and everything like that. How much in your mind in today's quarterbacks is how you scheme for a guy's particular skill set? Because that's the big question here is how much better can Kirk be if he's got an offense that fits him as opposed to with John DeFilippo last year?
Yeah, I think that's the ultimate question for most offensive coordinators or offensive-minded head coaches is to find what your quarterback does well and then design the offense around him. We are seeing more of a move league-wide into that, let's help our guy and scheme for our guy rather than, look, this is what we run, and you're going to have to figure out a way to run it. The interesting thing that I would like to see Minnesota do is what some other teams are doing, using personnel packages to dictate the defense you want to attack and then have routes and play designs to attack it. And when you think about what sort of Kyle Shanahan does as a play caller, they use 21 personnel, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and a tight end, more than anybody in the league. But they throw out of it so often because they get to go up against base defensive looks, and then they get linebackers matched up against running backs, matched up against fullback and Kyle Juszczyk, who's an extremely effective fullback. But they're very effective passing out of 21 personnel because they get the matchups that they want. I think more and more teams need to do things like that. You look at, Sean McVay and the Rams, they use 11 personnel almost all the time, but they get light boxes to run against. And so using personnel creatively, especially when, if you think about it, we just got done saying, look, Kirk Cousins, great off of play action, 21 personnel, that screams run. So that's a great opportunity to get a base defense to throw against, show play action, and then throw against those base defenses. I think that would be a great component to add to Minnesota's offense next year because it plays to a lot of Cousins' strengths as a passer.
Yep. And I think that's exactly why they drafted Irv Smith, to create some of those mismatches that you're talking about. And that would be the smart way. There was a play that I saw from the 49ers where the fullback and the tight end are the 2 wide receivers. They're the widest guys out. And Detroit is playing clearly his own defense because the corners are on them. So you got cornerbacks lined up against the fullback and a tight end and linebackers against wide receivers. It's like, okay, Detroit, I don't know if that's going to work for you very well. But that's the type of thing that I think the Vikings need to do more of for sure.
That's exactly right. And you think about, the New England Patriots, how many times do you see them come out and they'll have their fullback, James Devlin, and he's out by the numbers matched up against the corner because, like you said, man, what does that tell the quarterback? Tom Brady now knows exactly what the defense is doing because if you've got a corner outside over James Devlin, well, it's probably going to be zone coverage. And when you give a quarterback more information before the ball is snapped, he's going to be that much more successful after the snap.
Mark, you do awesome analysis. I was glad to see you writing about the quarterback that I cover here so I could learn something. Great stuff. And thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks so much for having me on, guys. Have a great afternoon.
Yeah, you too. That's Mark Schofield. His name is spelled exactly how you think. And you can follow him on Twitter for great football analysis. And the website that he wrote this for, he writes for a lot of different websites. Matt Waldman RSP. Matt Waldman's a guy who's been analyzing the draft for a long time.
What if you're a bad speller? You're saying out there it's spelled, to everybody who's listening, it's spelled exactly how you think.
It's Mark, M-A-R-K.
Okay, that was the only part I wasn't sure about.
Schofield is S-C-H-O and then Field, F-I-E-L-D. So there you have it.
Thank you.
That's exactly where you can find it.
All right.